Happy Friday. Thank you all for joining us tonight. And I know this is a little bit later than my other lives, so I really appreciate you guys taking the time to still come and support me. And I'm going to be having 3 guests with me tonight: X24 Reviews, Prepper Now, and the Roaming Prepper. And we're going to be discussing psychological warfare, sort of the history, and then how it's being deployed, as well as what we can do to kind of navigate the situation. So I am still waiting on Prepper Now to join us. I do have X24 with me and the Roaming Prepper. And I'm just going to go ahead and say hi to a few of you guys. Make sure that you can hear us loud and clear. If you guys, oh, great. You already gave me a 5x5. Look at that. So I'm just going to scroll up through here and see if I can see all you guys and say hi. I see Uncle Alice here. Hello. Hi, Nate. Good to see you. Thank you for coming. American Eagle Scout, welcome. Thank you for coming over and subscribing. Who else am I missing tonight? Hi, Sassy Gal. Thank you for being here and for modding. Do you guys see anyone else I'm missing? Cold War Preppers in here. Good to see you, Lee.
Hey.
Dr. Doctor's here. Hello. Hey, Apartment Prepper. Thank you for being here and for modding. Hi, Rita. And let's see. Granite State Prepper is here. Hello. Chrissy is here. Hi. Hi, LG. Good to see you. Linda K, Renata Clark, and Sierra Echo is here. Hello. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and just have you gentlemen go ahead and introduce yourselves really quick, if you don't mind, for those that may not know who you are. Do you want to go ahead?
Go ahead, Romy.
There you go.
Okay. Sorry, I muted myself. I was like
Listening.
talking to the dog. I'm the Roaming Prepper. A lot of what I do, the name was because I travel a lot. I'm actually a degreed engineer. I've been in industry for the better part of 25 years, and I was also a guardsman, a responder. I've gone through Ike, Harvey, Lily, the 2 big blizzards in the Northeast. So now just kind of sharing my knowledge, and every now and then a really good photo shoot of some faraway place I got to go to.
It's awesome. Thank you. You want to go ahead, X24, and do the same?
Yeah, so I'm X24 Reviews. I changed my name to X24 Prepper just to maybe fit in a little better, but I decided to go back to my original name just because of censorship reasons, and, you know, I guess I'm starting to head more in a direction to where I want to start doing a little more reviews on stuff, so hence the name change, and we'll see what happens from there. But South Texas now, and I'm new here, and I'm just like everyone else trying to stack stock and stick to the plan, you know?
Exactly. Sounds great. I still don't see Prepper Now. If you guys see him pop in, can you let me know? I don't know if you guys can see. Maybe you guys can't see. Maybe I'm the only one who can see if he shows up. All right. So I guess we're going to go ahead and just get started then. So what I'm going to do, guys, is if you guys have followed me for a while, you know that normally I open up some Q&A towards the end of this discussion, just like, you know, all my other lives. So once we're done, I will open that up at the end. And if you guys could go ahead and put your questions for us in all caps so I can see them, I would greatly appreciate that. So let's go ahead. And what I want to do is just kind of define psychological warfare before we get started. So if you guys could go ahead and give me what your definition would be of psychological warfare. You want to go ahead and start, X24?
Yeah. So I'm going to directly pull up the definition. Let's see. Hold on, sorry. I'll pull up the definition. And let's see what it says on here. Actions intended to reduce an opponent's morale. That's what it says on Google there. And I think to add to that, it would have to be something obviously mental more than physical. So when I would assume when they mean actions, they mean like, not physical action.
Right.
So there's obviously a lot that goes into that. I guess my definition would be manipulation of like money and like illnesses and manipulation of weather and just like things that surround you in your everyday life that would cause you to become upset or change the way you normally do things. I mean, there's a lot. Obviously, I'm just going off the top of my head, but yeah, go ahead.
I'm gonna go ahead, roaming.
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on. Truthfully, if you think about it, and I mean, I'm going a little bit into the business management, dealing with groups of people. When you're, in business, you want to inform people so that they're aligned so that you can accomplish some goal, like, all right, everyone, we need to increase production. So you kind of counsel and show people information to align them and get them in that direction. Well, psychological warfare is not far removed. In that context, what you're doing, though, is creating confusion, distrust, basically altering a group of people's perceptions so that they will do things that may not be in their interest but are in yours, and to confuse their situation such that they cannot respond back to you. If you go from that psychological to a physical action and you start taking steps, they're incapable of response because they basically don't know how to respond. They're unable to process the situation around them.
Great definition. Prepper Now, welcome.
Hey.
Hello.
Great to see you. Thank you for
Hopefully that's a
joining
5
us
by 5.
tonight.
Thank you for having me.
I greatly appreciate it. So what we're doing right now is I wanted to go ahead and just have everybody kind of chime in with what their definition of psychological warfare is before we start getting into this conversation. So if you want to go ahead and let us know what your thoughts are surrounding psychological warfare and what, your definition, that would be great. Can you hear me?
Is that for me?
Yeah, that's for you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought
they already went ahead and did it, so I'm waiting on yours before we get going.
Okay. All right. I thought that was like for the class. So would everybody give like a little one sentence warm up, as we say in education, a bell ringer. So yeah. All right. So that bell ringer is for me. Cool.
Yes.
Let's. I heard the end of what Roaming Prepper said, and I forget how thoughtful and intelligent he was. He hit a lot of marks. I think it's overwhelming the system, and I'm trying to find this thing. I posted it today to one of my links to my subscription thing on Patreon, and it had a really good, excellent thing. I want to talk about it.
Great.
But I have to find it. But basically, a psychological operation to me is kind of gaslighting. It's sleight of hand. It's a lot of different things, all wrapped up into trying to get people to be manipulated, and to basically take them down whatever kind of a path, whatever kind of a narrative you can make them go down. And so, yeah, I can't find it. It doesn't matter.
You can keep looking for it.
Yeah. No, it's cool. When I find it, I will. I want to focus on this answer. Psychology is a very interesting thing. I'm not a psychologist by any stretch of the imagination. I've had the pleasure of teaching it a few times. In fact, they asked me what I wanted to teach in my new thing, and I said specifically I'd love to do some sociology and psychology. And the reason why is because it is such a thing. You can get people, you can get animals, you can get them to do things they normally wouldn't do. You look at things like the Milgram experiment, where they can get people that were normally good human beings to go outside of their character and to do things that are nasty, and they would have never, under any other circumstance, succumb to that. And that's kind of where we're at right now. And now I'm remembering what this post was. it was kind of saying, you know, why is it that people of a higher socioeconomic frame
Mhm.
are doing things that otherwise they would have never done in as it is right now with the whole going along to get along. And there is a part in our brain which basically is kind of like a socialization check. And it's like, if this is this good for the group? Is this good for the herd? And if the herd is being herded in a way where it's doing something that, you know, as I like to affectionately call them, master class holes,
Mhm.
are doing and getting us in a way they are, then these people will go along to get along. It's basically just a big working of the mind to go along to get along. And so when I hear of psychological operation, that's what I think of. I think of mass movements. I read this great book by Eric Hoffer called oh God, I can't remember the name. It'll come to me later. I'm reeling. I was helping my wife make cookies, so I'm still in cookie land. She does a really good no bake oatmeal cookie that we made tonight. But anyway,
Okay,
True
see,
Believer.
now I'm gonna want cookies
I
later
know,
on.
right?
Oh,
You're
I'm
killing
Me
me.
telling you,
too.
she put chia seeds in them, so they're technically healthy.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, but it's called True Believer, and basically it studies the mass movements of people like Mao and, you know, Adolf and others, and how they got so many people to buy into this psychological operation, and it is really a cult of personality. And
Mhm.
so when I think of a psychological operation, whether it's a small group or it's a mass society, it's basically trying to get them to do things that they otherwise would not, to establish some form of an end goal. And usually that end goal is not good for the group itself.
Right. Awesome. Love it. Great
But to
answer.
your point, they were convinced that it
Oh,
was
yeah.
good for them at the time. I when you said when you brought up Hitler and Mao, I got to go to the Holocaust Museum in Dallas and the one in Houston. Dallas is massive. It's literally a 3-story building. And the what struck me, aside from how much engineering and science they put into being horrendous to other humans, was the complicity of neighbors.
Hmm.
They convinced people, and it was a big movement. Like a lot of people say, oh, they were collaborators. No, it was they convinced the populace that, you know,
Hmm.
the Jews, the blacks, or, you know, the Polish, whatever the enemy of the day was, and they just turned on these people,
Hmm.
and they systemically removed them. Either they ran them out or destroyed them. And you touch on a really important point. um, Once you create that narrative and they think it's good for the group, they can then be turned against those who are not compliant.
Right.
And what you said right there, as a person who's been fascinated by China, and I'm seeing a lot of like parallels and similarities in the Cultural Revolution. That's exactly what was going on. It was they would have these cadres of good communists, and they would go out, and usually it was kids in middle school or high school, and they would do so much as to rat out their parents. And they would go, "Oh, well, my parents are you know, they're still kind of on the old ways, as they called it, the old ways." And you know, they're not good communists. They don't have their little red book of Mao, and they're not a part of the Red Guard. And so I need to out them, because for me to be a good citizen, which was huge, you know, paramount in their society, and to go along with this whole new movement, I've got to rat out my mom and dad for the benefit of them. And we've seen that. There was a guy actually on January 6th, his son ratted him out. Now I'm not exactly sure. He might have deserved to be ratted out and all that for what he did, but from what I understand, he was like got entered in, and I've read about it. I think that they went overboard, as they have on basically all of them. But the guy's kid ratted him out, and so that right there was kind of a red flag, because it is becoming the societal thing where they're taking the youth and they're turning them against the older generations and doing this psychological operation for them to go along to get along, to be a good citizen society, and to basically change and do a cultural revolution of what's going on right now in America.
Right. Thank you so much. Okay,
Hey,
guys.
PBF, do you have to add something to that?
Do what? I'm sorry. I just want to
Can
say
I add
thank
something
you
to that?
really, really quick. I want to
Yeah.
say thank you to In My Crosshair before I forget. Thank you so much for that donation. Go ahead.
Okay. So since we're on the topic of large Asian nation, I figured I'd bring up the Art of War. I'm sure you guys have all heard of it.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
So I'm going to read off of Google. The premise of the art of war is that war should be avoided with diplomacy. If it cannot be avoided, it should be fought strategically and psychologically to minimize damage and wasting of resources. Warfare should only be a last resort, and heading into battle is already admitting a kind of defeat. So I think when we talk about psychological warfare, looking at these superpowers for an example is a good idea, because they're big and strong and powerful for a reason, including our own nation, right? Like, I know we do a lot of physical fighting, but obviously, like, the way we were able to spread ourselves apart in many other nations is partly because of like our capabilities with diplomacy, and also more so kind of psychological into maybe thinking that we're bigger and badder than the others, so they don't really want to mess with us. I'm sure that has some element to it as well, but I just wanted to add that.
Well, what you're saying there is like the projection of power, and
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think right now, and that's correct. You're seeing that especially from China. I used to say large Asian nation. I love it that you
Yeah.
said that. You know what? A week ago, I said, "Screw it, I'm done." I'm just kind
Yeah.
of, I really did, and so
Yeah.
I will. There's certain people I know really are trigger, China, whatever. I've got a conspiracy on that, but I won't go into it. So, but I say their name now. But yeah, the projection of power and all that. That's what, right now with what's going on with Taiwan is it really gave them an excuse, because if you look at what's going on, I almost did my video tonight on it, but instead with the passing of the Inflation Instigation Act, I decided to go there. Um, their banking system is just on the ropes. I mean, they really are in a precarious situation. And so what do you do when that happens? You take your people to war, or you get them to look at the shiny object. In Taiwan, is for them, it's the biggest shiny object you can get. And so that's why I think it was like, Pelosi provided them with an excellent opportunity, and I don't think we should capitulate to them or anything like that. I think there's some things that were good in messaging that we will not bow to them, but at the same time, it's a dance, but it's giving them an opportunity, because under the surface, they're screwed. Like there's a lot of problems with their banking system. There's a lot of people that are not paying in their mortgages. And so this under like current of financial issues, now you can really see the regime trying to do things to go over that and say, okay, we're going to go to war, or we're on the precipice of taking Taiwan. So people aren't thinking about that kind of stuff. And it's a lot of like kind of stokes that nationalism.
Right. So I wanted to go ahead and add, you guys have already given me wonderful definitions, but I wanted to go ahead and touch on the different types of warfare that might include, the type of manipulation that we would see, certain things that they have done with leaflets, radio, or other media broadcasts, visual intimidation, fake social media accounts, and then obviously the use of propaganda to encourage an enemy surrender. And one of the other things I wanted to talk about real quick is the symptoms of psychological warfare. And I wanted us to talk about this so that we could kind of keep it in the back of our mind while we're having this conversation. So they say that it is anxious apprehension at the most vulnerable psychological state. And it's characterized by the following: so overwhelmed with loneliness, appetite loss, guilt, lessening of group identification, withdrawal of physical and emotional investment. So not only are you withdrawing from the group, you're also withdrawing from yourself. And then the refusal to fight, and then going AWOL. So I just wanted to go ahead and give us that so that we had that in the back of our mind as we continue this conversation. So the next question I have for you guys is, when did modern psychological warfare start being greatly deployed, do you think?
I think it's always been used. I just think it's evolved with the times. Back in the ancient days, if you've ever read, I had to do a paper on Caesar's war commentaries, which, by the way, was convoluted at best. But one of the things the Romans would do when they were fighting the Galatians and the Gallic tribes is they would go and burn a field and run away. And people would get up and everything's on fire, but there was nobody to fight. It just burned. And they did this kind of repeated harassment, and it caused confusion, chaos, panic. So when they started to mobilize against the foe, whoever it was, they'd see the Legion come over. They were already wore out. They were frazzled. They were scared. People were disappearing at 2 in the morning. Yeah, I think it's been an ancient thing, but then you look at like the advent of radio. I think Hitler was a great example, and then Mao, as Prepper now pointed out,
Mm-hmm.
these are they just took this new media and just brought it to a whole new level where you could reach millions from a chair. And I think that's what we've witnessed. I think there's always been there, but I think it's just evolved with the technology. And now it's to the point, heck, they sent a text to everyone in Hawaii saying, "Oh, there's a nuclear missile inbound."
Right.
And they freaked out. They're putting their kids in sewers. They didn't know what to do with themselves. And that was one text.
Yep.
Just a change with the science.
Did
I
you guys?
yield to X24. I feel I came in last, so I think
So the question was, when do you think modern psychological warfare started kicking off? Is that right?
Yeah, that's it exactly.
Yeah, I would agree that the media and propaganda definitely were, when it was allowed to become larger. I think it's always been obviously around, because if you look at, I keep bringing up the large Asian nation, but look at the Great Wall of China, for example. Like they, as far as I remember from school, they were like working them to death, and so as they would die, they would just put cement over them and keep going. So I think it's always been around. Definitely the media has had a huge. They've had great success with the media for sure, and I think as more people are, they spend more time at home, or they start to spend more time on the internet or the television. I think that's when things became easier for them to reach. Obviously like the newsletters and like the news itself, it reaches a certain amount of people, but now they're starting to show you, like, on every single app you go on, there's news, or every single like game or movie, there's always some sort of agenda. So definitely when movies and news, and now even our music, that's been the biggest success for them for sure.
I think you've got a good point there, where they will use anything, whether it's music, social media, whatever. If it's got a mass appeal, they're going to use it. So I think that's really important point to hit on. When I think of this kind of a thing, I think of war. And for America, I think it really started. At first, I thought going back to World War One, but then I really started to kind of think about it. I think even the Civil War
Mm-hmm.
was kind of where it started. Because they had journalism back there. It wasn't anywhere near it is now, but they had different journals and everything. And with all the things that Lincoln was doing, if you look at Lincoln, he was he was not really doing things in line with the Constitution, and he needed to have that cover. And so he had very sympathetic people writing for him. And so you take that, and then you fast forward to World War One, and the first thing I thought of when you mentioned this was the Zimmerman telegram. For those that don't know, the Zimmerman telegram was this telegram that was between Mexico and Germany, and they basically saying that they want to get Mexico on their side and to help fight against the Americans on North America. People freaked out. Well, it came out later that it was basically BS. It wasn't real. And then, of course, you take that to World War II, and now they've taken all this and they have, really honed it into a way where they can even target down to the small group, whatever that may be. And so it is historically there. I think the Chinese soldier one is an excellent example. So it goes way back. This is something that's always done. I think the Roman reference by Roaming Prepper is a good one as well. Which, by the way, like you said that, I was like, ooh, that's something I know I want to read.
It was a good read, man.
I bet. But yeah, this is as old as time. All these things. I think what's happening now is it's really getting good. That's why they want to use Twitter. When they think about all this, Like, I remember there was this lockstep Twitter thing where thousands, there's obviously bots, are saying, you know, I speak for everyone when I say we need to call for a national lockdown. And this person had this like 5-minute video where it just scrolled through all the people who had literally verbatim what they said. And when you think about that and you're going through Twitter and it's going to eventually reach everyone, they use those for a reason. There's a reason why people on the progressive side want that weapon, and it is a weapon, so they can get the messaging down and just keep and hammer it into your head. Because back to the psychological operation thing, if it gets repeated enough into your head, you will eventually accept it in some way, shape, or form. You might not believe it, but it'll be there. That's why, you know, the Build Back Better thing. I've seen tons of videos where every leader is saying, build back better. We need to build back. We need a better.
Yes,
We can
I
build.
know.
I
I
mean,
think I've seen that too.
I know many. It's like you see that and you're like, oh my gosh. And then with the Ukraine war, if you look at the colors, there's a lot of like blue and yellow out there. Who won the Super Bowl? The Rams. And I'm not saying that they were put up there to win, but there's just a lot of things that they do where they kind of subtly try to mold your
Subliminal
feelings.
messaging, right?
Subliminal messaging, absolutely.
That's what I thought of instantly when you guys were talking about this stuff. And then it started getting me wondering about why they have gone to these, you know, where they want to do the shorts and where they want to do, you know, just the tinier things that we've got going on where they do these little clips. And if you think about it, if those things go viral, then those things are reaching a lot more people and they're going to start using those. And they know that people's attention spans have been greatly reduced. So they're grabbing onto these sorts of things and they're not elevating these types of platforms because they want the rest of us to be successful. It's so that they can get out their message.
And
I think the shorts and the TikToks ruined our average watch time on YouTube.
Oh yeah.
And to Prepper Now's point, if you think about it, those little shorts videos, who do they really target? You know, the 15, 16
the younger age range, exactly.
27-year-old. For those of you who have read 1984, you remember I'm sorry, Animal Farm, wrong reference, where they take the dogs' puppies away, and when they come back, they're basically the enforcers for the pigs. That's exactly what they're doing. They're indoctrinating. They're trying to indoctrinate the youth, but it's not to the benefit of the country. They think it is, but it's not. But that was a really good reference, by the way.
And also, I saw this thing where the guy, I think he worked for Coca-Cola. He figured out with subliminal messaging in movie theaters. And in the 1960s, they put these really quick little blips of popcorn and Coca-Cola, and the sales went up by like 40, 50%. So it really is. This is not something that is just brand new or new to this age. This is something that has gone on for a long time. And they know that if they can use it in the right ways, they can really form the thoughts of society.
Exactly. Okay. So my next question for you guys is, do you believe that psychological warfare goes beyond the government's admittance? It's kind of a given.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think all three of us would say yes.
Yes, exactly.
And I don't think it's symmetrical. I think you've got different agencies, different entities, different players, all doing their own little thing, trying to get their little, how would I say it, a fiefdom, their own little kingdom, and accomplish their goals. That's why sometimes we're watching the news and it's all contradictory and you're like, what? It's doublethink, and you're sitting there going, what are these people thinking? They're not aligned. I think these powerful people don't want to be aligned with the other powerful people. They want to have power over them. So I think we're witnessing a lot of aristocratic fighting among the elites, honestly.
That's interesting. I hadn't really thought about that, but I mean, I guess it makes sense from a standpoint of where you have not just the governments, but then you have like your big pharma, you have your big bank, you have your big business. So they're all essentially warring with one another, is what you're saying, huh? Did you guys want to chime in on that? Anything else you wanted to add there?
I yield till the end. Or I can go. I can go. I don't want to feel like I'm waiting to put the last stamp on things.
No, it's okay.
No, go ahead.
And Faith, Prepping by Faith and I have talked about this. I'm always my worst enemy in like my mind. I always think I'm like saying something that's wrong or whatever. You know, I'm always
I
so
do it too.
critical. We were talking about this one day in kind of the back end. You
Mhm.
know, and it's just funny. But yeah, I mean, of course, the government, you know, manipulates and does all this for
Oh, yeah,
their
of course.
benefit. I mean, it's just their whole purpose is like any entity. It doesn't matter what it is. It wants power. It wants more power, and it knows that if it can manipulate the situation, it'll get it. And so it's just going to keep going. And I mean, just look at the Inflation Reduction Act. It literally does
Mhm.
the exact opposite.
Right.
You know, so you can think, oh, that's an oxymoron or
What?
whatever, but like when you look at it, it really like when I saw that, and now I'm so jaded now to the point, and maybe it's because you know this is my wheelhouse of what I do as an educator. I see these bills and I'm like, this is going to do the exact opposite. This is going to be that's why I've been calling the Inflation Instigation Act because that's exactly what it's going to do.
I
It's
love
you know
that.
even Goldman
Mhm.
Sachs went in and looked at it, like it's going to go up through 2024
Yeah.
and then it'll go down. And it's not like it's going to go down by like 5%, 7%.
No.
It
Well,
goes
if you're
down
Biden, we're at 0, right?
like, well, it goes down by 0.1%. And what he said there with the 0% thing is technically just a gimmick. It's a lie, you know. So I don't know. You know, they're gonna take whatever situation and put it in there. And I think we're kind of at the end of a lot of things, and we're at this really problematic area, and they know it. And
Mm.
eventually, you know, it's all gonna really just it's gonna be so they can't hide it anymore. And so at this point, they're just kind of, you know, taking down as much, you know, they're taking the frames of pictures off the wall and the furniture, and they're loading it up because they know that pretty soon it's going to all be pretty plain for all to see because
Mm.
it's just they can't hide it anymore.
Did you want to add anything, X24, before we move on?
No, I think you guys hit the nail on the head. I mean, yeah, it's too obvious at this point, and that's I kind of think the benefit of all the information that we have access to now is we're as a people starting to become, you know, collectively more, well, I can't speak for everyone, but at least it seems like in our community for sure, we're all starting to become a lot more aware of these types of things and definitely not falling victim to them as easy as, you know, before. Like beforehand, you know, just a few years ago, I was always excited to go see the new movie that just came out. And I can't tell you now when's the last time I went and gone to go see a movie, you know? So that's
I'm the
just one
same
example.
way. I'm the same way. I used to be like I was a football player
Mm-hmm.
and I love sports. I come up in the sports
Yep.
family and I
Yep.
just cannot do sports anymore. It's so it's not that I think it's fake or whatever. It's just I think it is like it's just a distraction.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I have to be fully focused. I can't sit there and relax on it. Like I'm in a fantasy football league, but it's only because these are people I've known for 20 years, and it's like kind of a nostalgia thing. You know, these are people you know, I've literally this thing goes back to 2001, and so it's like I can't give it up because these are all my old friends from where I grew up, and you know, some of my first friends, and so. But like, is my heart in it? No, it's just because it's I don't know, it's all a distraction.
Bread and circuses.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So the next question I have for you guys is, what recent events do you think we've been through that have deployed psychological warfare? There's so many,
All right.
right?
How about you go first? You go first, prepping by faith.
You want me to go first?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm your answer.
Go ahead. I will then. Okay. So I think one of the first things that we all instantly think of is 2020, right? And
Yep.
the immense psychological warfare that was emitted on the people of the world. So we were all locked down, some of us to a greater extent than others, which created a lot of that, the psychological issues in people and caused, you know, many to commit suicide. And we were all told to stay 6 feet apart, wear a mask constantly, get the jab once it was available. And they've used all of that to their advantage. And I think that one of the best ways for them to gain control of our minds is to intimidate us with fear. So that's why I think it's so important that we do our own research and understand when something may be a true threat and when it's being over exaggerated. And I think it also helps to have a personal relationship with God, because some of these things are just out of our control. And I think that's why they're so interested in crushing Christianity, because if they can get you to no longer rely on a larger power, that, you know, then they believe that they can get you to rely solely on them, which gives them more authority over you. And I think there is so much of this going on that people have become numb to it all. And I think they're using it to a great extent to change our history. We've seen where they're, removing different monuments and things and erecting new ones to change the meanings of words. We're seeing now where we have a whole new vocabulary of pronouns. We're seeing it on the move in our culture, where if you don't think exactly like the mainstream narrative that's being pushed, you're suddenly canceled. And they are literally calling good evil and evil good. And I think a lot of this LGBTQ movement is geared towards mind control. And, it's not because these people really want to align themselves with them because they care so much about this group. I think they've jumped on this one because it really leaves a population confused on so many levels, especially our children. And if they can convince you that you don't even know what gender you are anymore, then they can easily manipulate you on so many levels. And identity goes to the core of your being. And so if you don't know who you are, then you can be easily led astray. And I think as a side note on that, not only that, it can also greatly help them on their depopulation front. So if they can get people to stop procreating to a significant level, then that's also going to help further their agenda. So that's what I think.
All right, can I go next?
Go ahead.
All right. So yeah, that was great. I totally agree, 100%. I think part of this too, this whole thing is just like you said. I think in some fashion they're almost trying to play God for at least some of these vulnerable people, mentally vulnerable people, I should say. And I think one of the other major events that's recently been a part of this is, the BLM movement. I think it started before 2020, even though that's when it kind of really went mainstream. But I mean, for example, the whole St. Floyd thing, I mean, they're trying to raise these, just like you said, they're trying to make good evil and evil good. That's a big one right there. And yeah, the whole cough thing was, I think, like Roaming Prepper said earlier, I think the psychological warfare has sort of evolved from it's always evolving, I think, from way back when, we're talking, the beginning of time to now. I think now it's heavily influenced by our emotions. And so that's why they want to tap into, like, your identity. For example, some people really truly believe in this gender thing, or that's what their life is about. And some people's identity is based on the color of their skin or the language they speak. And while that has its own conversation, that's kind of how they're tapping into us and dividing us, and that's also related to psychological warfare as well, as we all know.
Should I go and let Roaming Prepper get the last one on this one?
Go for it.
Yeah, let me. I want to call you the Roman Prepper from here too. No, X24 said some great stuff there. The playing God thing, absolutely correct. They want to replace all this. I mean, when you look at all this, what is communism? Communism replaces the religion and puts the state in place of it. So the religion becomes a state, and the state becomes the religion. And you're seeing this, especially on the progressive side of the political aisle. They sit there and you watch them with something like, I think something we haven't talked upon is, I affectionately call it infanticide. That whole thing that was going on. I mean, you would think that this is some kind of like freedom of speech type right. And when you look at it, first of all, I mean, it maybe affects like a couple few million people. And, out of a country of 340 million, and also the fact that when you look at other societies, like in a lot of Latin American and South American and Central American places, first of all, you can't do it, or you can do it, but it's under very extreme circumstances. Same thing with like, Europe too. I mean, Europe is much more conservative on the front, but here, for some of these people, it's like this holy grail, and that is because that is a symptom of the state becoming the religion. And so they're sitting there and they're seeing this as some kind of a huge deal. And I'm looking back at it and I'm like, well, first of all, you can still do that. Like, you can go to California where they'll take you up to the very end. Trust me, the legislature's working out there for that. But in Texas, in Indiana, in Georgia, wherever, yeah, if you're there, you might have to travel to go do it. But you know what? If you're doing that kind of a thing, you should have to work for it anyway. I personally don't think it should be allowed, but so that's a big psychological operation right there. I mean, of course, the 2020 thing is, we're calling it, that's the elephant in the room. I
Mhm.
think that set up everything, and
Yeah.
now they're just
I
kind of, that's why they come out. And I tell my wife this because she's in the medical field. They come out today and they're like, oh, the CDC drew back everything. It's like, of course they do. They've got an election in 3 months.
Right.
This is totally political. So everything's going to go back to normal. The gas is going to go down. The bread will go down. We'll just be hunky dory until November 9th. And then on November 9th, the mask will come off again and the monster will come back into the room and the priest will put the big, government thing on his placard and come out and start talking about how we all have to bend our knee to the state. And that's the problem. And that's why with prepping by faith, what you just said is a really important thing, is like with the Christianity thing.
Mhm.
I mean, they really do want to turn that into the crosshairs of something that is taken out and is a bad thing. And that goes back to the infanticide thing, because, they want to make it seem like you're taking away people's rights. Well, that just adds another thing that people get into this religious state of mind as their thoughts and feelings on Christianity. And I hate to break it to them, we are originally a Judeo Christian society, and a lot of our laws and morals come from that.
Exactly.
So now they're trying to undo it, because basically, like I forget who said it before, they're trying to make us unmake our history. And as a
Yes.
history teacher, that aggravates all that. Just I can't, that's what like really shakes my coil, is you can't do that, because that's what they did in China. They don't remember the Ming dynasty or any of that. That's not taught in any schools. So they undid the history, and that's what's going on now. And I passed to the Roman prepper.
Roman. I'm gonna have to wear, that Legionnaires
Oh
hat
yes,
with the little fluff. And you just started a whole new thing with me
I
now.
love
I
it.
love it.
I
And
love it.
yeah, and I have a cheeky sense of humor, if you guys hadn't noticed.
Yes.
So actually, if you think about it, and I know Prepper Now, and probably all of you have read, 1984 and Brave New World. These authors, Huxley and Orwell, they actually already gave us this playbook. They already
Mhm.
said this is what you'll see. So the Brave New World, right? There was no marriage. Everyone could do whatever they wanted with everyone, and there, if you read it, it wasn't gender fluidity. There was male and female, but everything was good. Everyone just did whatever, and that's what they're pushing toward in the society now. Um, the constant changing of history and the rules. The Ministry of Truth from 1984. They kept changing the books, burning the books. If you remembered the books, you hid it, you went to jail, and then they beat you up and did whatever they did to their main character. Um, these playbooks, these guys have already like laid it out and said, hey, when you start seeing all of this, it's not bueno. Um, in particular, Brave New World, he postulated it would be one of those environments. This was again years ago, where people would constantly be medicated, right? It was Soma. What was it? Soma was the med in that book. And they would always have entertainment, and they would be distracted. Orwell portrayed this awful environment, with the Gestapo running around beating people up. But I think Huxley was closer, because he said they're just going to distract the crap out of us.
Mhm.
And as generations go by, we become more stupid.
Yeah.
We're more distracted. The bread and circuses reference from Prepper Now, and these guys laid it out. I mean, I reread the book when the Rona hit. I was bored. I was like, I'm going to reread these two books, and that just depressed me. I was like, oh, I should not have read that. But you think about it, these guys saw the playbook, and we're witnessing it right now. It absolutely floors me.
Well,
Yeah.
Aldous Huxley, like he kind of sets up. I think he's got like the first half of the book we're living through, and
Mhm.
Orwell's got the second half, and we're going
Yep,
from
That's a great
that
point.
first
that's
half to that second half. I told my
mhm.
daughter today, she's like, "What's your favorite quote?" My quote has always been, "Facts do not cease to exist simply because they are ignored." It is Aldous Huxley. And
Yeah,
so I was telling her, it's like, you've got to read Brave New World. And I was saying, so I love that we're talking about this. But yeah, that's absolutely correct. We're just in this, kind of current pharmacological state, and then the authoritarian one is about
mhm.
to unveil itself and really get going. And yeah, both of those authors had visions of the future, and we're kind of in this twisted back and forth between the two, and it's
Yeah.
aggravating when you're you sentient to it, and you're like, I see this, I see it, and everybody else is just like, oh well, whatever.
It's interesting you say that because those guys knew each other too. They
Yes.
were peers, they were
Hmm.
friends, and they often debated what dystopia humanity would fall into. And the fact that you tied them together, that's interesting because you're right. It starts with the make them all dumb, distract them, give them,
The carrot.
pleasure, and yeah, the
The
Yes.
carrot
carrot,
and then give them the stick,
Absolutely.
and
right?
then exactly, and then the Gestapo shows up and they chase you around. So that's a really good comparison or tie together, man.
Well, we're living through it, I mean, it's all around us, and then she asked me what another of my favorite quotes. I said, don't smile or don't cry because it's over, smile because it happened, which is Dr. Seuss. I had to bring it back down to like the fourth grader level. But anyway, yeah, we are. I mean, look at how much power our pharmacological state has now,
Mhm.
and that's exactly what we're in. Um, Everything is brought to you by Pfizer. Everything. You look at the, you watch a football game. Halftime show brought to you by Pfizer. Everything is brought to you. It's because they're in there and they're doing this, and they're making their money, and pretty soon, we're all going to be so anesthetized and so doped up that it just, and there's a large, unfortunately, there's a large faction of the country already that is, and maybe it's because I'm a recovering alcoholic and drug addict, sober almost 16 years. I see it for more of what it is, and it's sad, but it really is pushed on everybody and a lot of people, and especially as we get more depressed, we get more suppressed, and we get more repressed. It becomes even more of a thing. There's even more of a tendency to use drugs and anesthetize ourselves.
Excellent point. So, my next question for you guys is, how do we determine when something is psychological warfare and when it is simply a lie we're being told, or, is there really a difference? Any thoughts
Let's
on
let
that?
Roman get a crack at that first.
Oh, you guys gave me the easy one here.
It is kind of
Actually, I would think, and again, it's like an abusive relationship. Someone mentioned in the chat. First, you have to recognize something's going on in the first place.
Hmm.
If you don't understand that something's wrong, then you're in the bubble. You've taken the blue pill. You have no idea what's going on. But once you start seeing it, in my mind anyway, to make this distinction, psychological warfare is aimed at an ultimate goal. So you're going to see a pattern. You're going to see the take your meds. You're going to see wear your face pamper. You're going to see do it for the people around you, and so on. You're going to see this campaign. Whereas just a lie for specific purposes off on its own, where someone just says, "Oh, I have no idea where the $5 million went." That's They're not psychological warfare to the community. That's an individual, and I'm just making I guess, an academic distinction. They're just saying, "Well, I don't know where the money went." That's a lie. But they're not hurting me. They're not affecting society as a whole. But when you see that campaign, you start seeing those trends, um, like the PSA that was posted in New York State, where they're uh, again, where'd that come from?
right.
Why did we just give a heart attack to like half of New York City? They didn't need that. They had
Well,
enough
then they
going on.
followed it up with the one in California as well, right?
Yeah. It turns out that goofy one was old, but the fact
Yeah.
that it was actually a PSA is terrible.
That's awful.
I mean, it was funny, it's kind of catchy, but it was terrible. But yeah, I would think in true psychological warfare over time, you're going to notice a pattern where
Mhm.
all these different variables are all trending to one direction. The problem is, one, recognizing it in the first place,
Mhm.
and then two, trying to figure out where it's going. And I think that's folks like us debating this and having this discourse in the community, at least nothing else, it kind of, wheat from the chaff kind of thing. We're kind of trying to separate it out and figure out what's going on. A lot of people in the street, they don't even know we have a turkey shortage, or the crops were bad. They're oblivious. They just know stuff isn't in the store. They don't understand the context. So
Well, and do they even care? That's the other question that I have, because I look around at most of these people and I think that, to Prepper Now's point, they'd rather just get their meds and just stay anesthetized because it's just easier. They don't have to think about it.
Yeah, I think the live versus psychological warfare thing it really just depends on the circumstance, but it really does seem like lately, especially when it comes to politics or economics, most all of these lies are sort of aimed at, the greater purpose of psychological warfare on other countries and our own people, for example. That's at least in my opinion, but, like, for example, when T-Man was in office, right? Like, obviously there was a ton of lies thrown at him, right? But I think regardless if you look at them as if they were like little lies or whatever, they were all focused on the purpose of making him look bad or making him look like a bad guy, or, trying to also turn like people against each other. And so I think it just depends on what, but at least lately it really does seem like it's all tied together, economics and politics. So I guess that's my 2 cents on that.
You do Orange Man Bad, as I affectionately call him. It's I got to tap out after this one because I promised my wife I wouldn't go too long on here. So that's my fear with getting him back into office. I think he just evokes such a visceral response by the opposition, and so we're kind of in this place where I wanted to end on a positive note. So let me go there. I think people are seeing through this stuff. I really do. I've never seen so many people. Even my parents. My parents are almost 80 years old, and I'm having like full on red pill conversations with them. And these are people that did everything they're supposed to do and live a nice life and are in retirement and can go to the beach when they want, and they're avid Fox News junkies and all that kind of stuff. Your typical 1980s Reagan Republicans, but they see through it now, and so that gave me kind of hope. And I'm seeing a lot of this around. I think, we sit here and we see all of the people that are doing the things. The problem is, and the question is, are enough people going to wake up before all this happens? That's why a big thing on my channel has been, if you really want to evoke some change, take your wallet out of it. If you don't like what that company's doing or saying, take your wallet out of it. I don't like that Allstate is into ESG. I'm going to switch over to State Farm. I'm sure they probably are in another way or whatever. I know a couple months ago they were talking about the trans thing, but they got that shut down because enough people were like, this isn't going to work for us. You can affect change through your wallet. You really can. There's a bunch of movies that were taken down because they were putting out all this stuff. And trans and the whole sexuality thing and whatever, that's all a psychological operation on its own. But you can do things. We can, as a society, amass a powerful thing, because in the end, their real God is money. And if you can separate them from it, they will change to our needs. But the problem is that we're just slowly kind of awakening to all this right now. And we got to get more people to come on board and to say, I don't like the trajectory. I don't like where things are going. This isn't the America that I grew up in. And we need to start to do things to get it back to where it was. And that was one thing that I think Lauren Boebert said on the House floor today in the Inflation Instigation Act, was that, a lot of people are looking around and they're saying, this is not the America that I grew up in. This is not the place I want it to be. This isn't what I want. I want to get us back on the right track. And so the fact that we're having this conversation, we see all these operations, these psychological operations going on for what they're worth. I think people are tapped out. I think they're done. I think they see through all of this. There is a faction of people that are just going to go along to get along no matter what happens. But I think we're getting to a tipping point where people are seeing it for what it is, and they've said enough. And I'm seeing that more and more and more and more every day. And so that's why I think these conversations are important. The more of us going out and doing the YouTube thing or doing the TikTok thing or doing whatever and using that as a weapon for undoing all this stuff is never been more important. And so, I think I thank you guys for being creators of doing good things and having this conversation. I do have to tap out and go eat some cookies and hang out with my wife. But yeah, this is a great panel. I mean, obviously, I can tell if I like the panel by how much I want to talk. And I feel like I'm like I just like every time any one of you says anything, I'm like, ooh, I can talk about this.
Right?
Oh, I can talk about that. Oh,
Well, we
Well,
gotta hand it to Prepping by Faith for picking such a good topic.
oh yeah, this was great.
absolutely,
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
absolutely.
I appreciate you coming on to Prepper Now. I
Thank
understand you
you.
got to have family time because, you know, we
Yes.
all have to squeeze that
Okay,
in.
you have to post pictures of the cookies. I'm
know.
I'm
I
a big
totally wanna see
foodie.
it.
I'm absolutely curious.
Oh man. Okay, I'll try to. They're no bake oatmeal. She's got them down. She
Oh,
doesn't even
man.
need like the directions anymore.
Do they have
So
raisins in them too?
she cannot stand raisins, so we
Oh,
never have
really?
raisins. Oh, I'm
Oh.
telling you. But we buy actually she approved it tonight. I said, "Can we buy bulk oatmeal because we do so much of it. The kids eat it for breakfast. We use the no bake cookies, and our rabbits can eat it too." And so I'm like, "This is the perfect super prep." She's
Oh
like,
wow.
"Okay, we can do that." So we'll go out and get a mass amount. But yeah, they it's just basically vanilla extract, brown sugar, cacao or whatever,
Mhm.
oatmeal, and I think some chocolate chips melted down.
Oh,
And
yeah.
she just makes it into this like kind of boiling thing in a pot, and then mixes it all up, and then puts it on a thing of like Reynolds wrap and lets them cool, and they're ready in like 8 minutes, and
And
they're
everything's better with
fantastic.
chocolate.
I'm telling you, they're
Oh
fantastic.
wow. That just
So
sounds really good.
Yeah, it does.
yeah, and she
Now
can
I'm
make
gonna
them.
have to look it up.
She can make them blindfolded too, so it's kind of good. But no, I appreciate you having me on, and I would love to come back and do this again.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
thanks to everybody. Please tell people about these other channels, and tell people about what's going on, and hit the like button and do all those things. We got to keep this going. We need good creators like these people here to keep pumping out the content and making people aware of what's going on, because we can affect change positively. And I'll wrap that up.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
if you guys aren't subscribed to Prepper Now, please go ahead and go over there and subscribe as well.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right. We'll see you around.
All right.
Okay, so one last question I have for you guys, and it just kind of ties into how he kind of ended his response. Do you guys think that there's anything that we can do to combat the psychological warfare?
Hold on. I just had all my screens disappear on me at
Oh,
once.
no.
That's what happens. You leave an engineer with a keyboard for too long, he's going to start hitting the wrong buttons. God. You want this one, X, or?
Yeah, I'll go.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to add just before you left that I think what we're doing right now, sort of being the, I don't want to just say us because I know there's a lot of people involved with this, but being the ones that are, we'll know the truth and be able to pass down the truth to our generations. Like, for example, we all know that they're going to tackle the history books heavy. And so in 100 years from now, what are our children and our grandchildren and so forth going to be taught? They're going to be taught the narrative that's being portrayed now, because the winners and the rulers are always the ones that write the history books. So I think as long as we can be the resistance, and I don't want to sound like I'm banging the war drums or, start a riot or anything, but what I'm trying to say is, like, if we can, like, first, like, stay strong in our beliefs and our, morals, and make sure that we pass those good things and whatever else to our children and so on and so forth, and raise them correctly, spend more time with them, get them off these electronics, don't allow them to fall into these traps with all these agendas like the movies and the music and all that stuff, because I think that's what's really lacking. Unfortunately, our parents and our parents before us didn't really see what was coming, so they couldn't really prepare us for this, because just like we were talking about earlier, they have us all fat and happy with a corner store on every street and McDonald's on every corner and whatnot. So we're just living life, and America's the greatest country in the world. But little do we know, they've been working super hard in the background to now arrive at the point we're at now. And so again, I think the only thing that we can do now is just sort of be the resistance, make sure that we don't fall one for ourselves, but also don't let our future generations fall into this. And hopefully with enough of us gathering together, and obviously by the grace of God, we can defeat this beast that has been talked about. So that's what I got.
That's awesome.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And that's a lot of the reasons I started this channel was just originally just to share knowledge, but the more I mixed in with the community, the more I realized, wow, there's something larger than just having supplies for an emergency that we need to address. And it's not just, here on YouTube, as X pointed out, you also have your kids and the kids they're with. I was a Cub Scout leader for my sons, so I watch these little boys grow into young men. Several of them are officers in the military, good faith-based guys, people who do credit to the country. Um, I still see them on this, I'll see them when I go visit the various towns and cities. You can affect people just day to day. You'd be shocked at in these times, people are stressed. And if you reach out to someone, you see them in the store confused, and you offer a kind word or a good piece of advice, and that person may walk away with an more open mind than when they started that morning. So, just reaching out, this is a very grassroots thing that's going on for us. We don't have the big media. I mean, we're using a media to get to people, but it's a day-to-day thing. And I think Dragon had put earlier, homeschool, a Dragon Slayer, homeschool if you can. If you can't, go over the homework every day.
Oh yeah.
I had at least 3 calls from principals because my sons challenged the teacher or my daughter challenged the teacher, and then one got sent home because he called a teacher a Orwellian useful idiot, which probably was a bit much, and he wound up in the principal's office. But he was right. The
Mm-hmm.
thing is, the principal's like, I'm not going to suspend him, but he needs to not say those things in the class. So he and I had a talk about how to convey tactfully. But
Yes.
when he came home, I was like, challenge that. My kids have all read 1984 and Animal Farm. You wanted a car? You got to read a book. So, challenge your kids. Don't be afraid to. They'll thrive on it eventually.
I love that. So I think, one of the other things that we need to do is just continue to do our best to sift through this information that we're provided. And we need to know our rights as citizens, not just federally, but also what our state laws say. And we need to understand that we're never going to have all the facts of any one event because there are always going to be truths peppered with lies. So I think we need to also guard against spending too much time absorbing all of the news that comes out, because it can begin to overwhelm us and bring on another level of anxiety, which is one of those symptoms of psychological warfare. So taking the time to be informed, but also to establish balance so that we're not immersed in it 24/7. And I also think that staying rooted and grounded in the Word of God is critical, because the truth is there for us all to see. And knowing what God says is going to help us make those better decisions and be able to exercise wisdom and the spiritual discernment that we so desperately need going forward. So that's kind of what I think about that. I did want to go ahead and allow you guys in chat, if you had any questions for us, to go ahead and put those out there now, because we are a little over time. Just in case you guys did you guys have anything else that you wanted to add to the conversation, either that we didn't cover?
No, I got to tell you, this was a fun conversation because we got into it, and
Mm-hmm.
then PN showed up, and all 4 of us were
We
just
just were
having
feeding
fun.
off of each other.
And all of a sudden, you looked up, and you're like, "Oh, and so we're at almost an hour," and we're all. I mean, the
We're
hour
like,
just went
really?
by.
Yes, it did. It flew.
That bullfrog has 12 questions.
Oh, 12 questions. We might need to pare those down a little bit, Uncle Al. Anything for us, guys? I'm not seeing anything, and I don't want to.
Assertion.
In reference to, you're going to have to be a little bit more specific, I think, with us, Uncle Al, because
Renata has a question.
Do you see it? Maybe it hasn't. Okay. It's not in caps. That's why I didn't see it. Would it be necessary to pull my money out of the bank? What do you guys think about that one? I don't like touching those types of things because I feel
Yeah.
like that is one of those where it feels like financial advice.
Yeah.
And so what I would kind of tell you is I believe in having diversification when it comes to your assets. So things like your preps and everything that you're stocking back, focusing on those, but also having some cash on hand.
Yeah.
If you already have a lot of your preps and things, then you can start looking into other things like precious metals. But diversification I think is going to be key, and it's something that we need to do, and I think it's something that we all make a habit of doing when it comes to prepping anyways, isn't it? Because I mean, we prep in layers, right? So even if we put back water, we're also putting back water purification, and we're putting back filters and all these other things. So there's layers upon layers, and I think you need to do the same thing when it comes to your financials.
Yeah. I would add, if you're looking for knowledge, I would take a class if you can. Continuing ed, the adult education courses in the local college or online. There's a lot of free stuff, and just better understand the system of money and banking we're all dealing with. I think a lot of people fall victim. My wife was a realtor at one point. We had rental properties, and I watched people lose their homes making decisions, and I'm sitting there going, "What are you doing?" And then I realized they didn't understand the environment they were. They were like that fish swimming around. They had no idea what else was in the water. So I would recommend, other than giving financial advice, which I'm not qualified to do, educate yourself as best you can as to the money system, where risks are, and then decide for yourself, do I want to take those kind of risks?
Yeah. And getting off and under debt too, I think, right? I mean, that's another critical one. Did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I'll add. I'll turn the question back on her. Do you really trust these financial institutions? And just like we were speaking about earlier, a lot of these larger companies and institutions are a part of this beast and a part of this this whole agenda. So that would be the question I'd have for you: is do you trust these people enough with your hard-earned money and your livelihood, so to say? And that's kind of what I would add, and that's the way I'd look at it, without providing any financial advice or anything like that.
Right. So how do you balance waking people up versus angering people and looking like a loon?
This is a good one.
I think you have to do it in small doses, and you have to know your audience, right? I mean, if it's somebody who's brand new to it, don't just, hit them over the head with all of this stuff in one go. Use it, as a learning opportunity. And one of the things that I like to say is, just get them to start thinking, if they're not thinking about preparedness at all, or, any of the stuff that we do to prepare, start talking to them about, just handling weather related things, prepping for natural disasters. Start there, start somewhere. And I think that's a really good place for people to start. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I would say that first and foremost, as much as you love and care for the person, they have to be able to want to help themselves before you can ever even break that barrier. And unfortunately, that's just been the truth in my own personal life. It's, no matter how much you care and try to break it to the person, however, whatever different ways or methods you try, really it just comes down to that person and what they think and believe. And that's the unfortunate part, is this psychological warfare has so many people so literally brainwashed. It's sad. And, I say that from my point of view, of course they would probably have the same opinion on me, but
nuts, right?
I mean, at least as far as I know, I mean, I think I'm on the right track. That's all I'll say. But that's subjective, right?
Definitely. I found that, like X had pointed out, small doses are best, and as Prepping by Faith pointed out, you need to understand the audience. A good example, I was a safety guy at one point in my career. They needed a safety guy. I literally walked in. They're like, "You're the safety guy for the next 6 months." I'm like, "All right." I've had to do safety meetings in front of groups of people, And I brought up hurricane preparedness. We were down on the coast, working offshore. And I said, hey, look, it's that time of year, and this is just what happens every year. And I found two preppers at the end of the meeting. Two guys were like, wait a minute, and they kind of caught me off on the side. But I had a lot of other people come to me. So there's opportunities in day-to-day conversations where you don't come in with a bludgeon.
Yeah.
You come in more with a very precision tool, and you're like, hey, we're going to have a turkey shortage. You should have some extra food. Oh, by the way, there's inflation. You should buy canned goods now and eat tomorrow on today's prices. Oh, by the way, and you're just taking little.
Yeah.
And if they get it, you'll see the light come on, and all of a sudden, then you start getting the texts. Ironically, with my kids, the one I thought would be awake is largely clueless, and the one I battled has probably 3 months in their house. One of them was listening to me apparently. So you never know, but little bits, and just watch your audience, and you're going to start seeing some of them pick it up, and then okay, that's someone I can come back and talk to.
And to X24's point, though, too, sometimes you just have to wait for them to have their own personal shtf before they finally wake up. I mean, that does happen sometimes. And so at that point, they're going to be more receptive to what you have to say as well.
And remember, shtf doesn't have to be the zombie
No,
apocalypse.
It doesn't.
It could be you get laid off, or God forbid, there's a car accident and now a spouse is in the hospital for 6 months. It could be a day-to-day thing, but you have 3-4 months of food, even a month of food. That's something you don't have to worry about, so you can take care of whoever's in the hospital.
Exactly.
So you don't just prep for these big things, you prep for the everyday things on a large scale.
Yeah, exactly. So LG wants to know how to break free from psychological warfare. I feel like we kind of already addressed that to the best of our ability. I don't know. Do you guys have anything else you wanted to add to what we said earlier?
Man, that's a tough one. You guys got some zinger questions tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do. I guess, to your point earlier, is just limiting our interaction with electronics, right? I mean, a lot of what we're inundated with is, MSM. So I guess maybe trying to avoid as much of that as possible, because I feel like a lot of what we're witnessing comes through them first. Doing it in small doses. I mean, you want to stay informed, but you don't want to be in it all the time, which is kind of what I had said earlier. So that, I mean, for me, that's one of the things that I think that you can do.
I'll add too that I think us as preppers, all our community is pretty much on the best track possible, because the more you can stash away and basically remove the need to panic buy or any of those things that would cause, safety concern or just necessity on the system itself, is definitely a good start. So prepping and financial freedom, as you said, getting rid of debt, and then as Romy Prepper said, maybe putting your money into like rentals or something like that you can have extra income, so you're not always relying on having to live paycheck to paycheck and then go to the grocery store every single time. Because if they close the grocery store down, we all know that there's not much time before it's empty. And especially if the refrigerators are off, there's not much time before everything starts going bad, Well, that's one way.
Yeah, no, most definitely. What I would do is, I had a professor who was really, every now and then you get a teacher or professor that really sticks with you. And I remember this. I can't remember his name. He was just a skinny dude from England. And he taught a philosophy and theories class. And he said, question everything. Because if, like I said, psychological warfare could come off like an abusive relationship. Usually the victim doesn't really understand that they're being treated badly. But if you question everything, you're going to start seeing contradictions. You're going to start saying, well, wait a minute. You said we had 0%, but that was because it went from 9% inflation to 8% inflation. That's still like 5 times more than it was a year ago. So
right,
that was true, not true. And I'm just using that as an example. You'll start seeing those contradictions when you start challenging. So question everything. One of the things that offended me the most was the pinch doctor uh,
Mm-hmm.
telling everyone to question me is to question science. Buddy, I'm an engineer. I question science. I break stuff all the time. That's my
Right.
job. You want this task done, so you call guys like me and we put equipment together, and it's like, oh, hey, look, it's on fire. That didn't work. You know,
And they're not
question
even
it.
abiding by science. They're saying don't question our science.
Yep.
Right.
Keyword R.
Sponsored by Pfizer. Yeah, no.
Mm-hmm. So somebody wants to know about FedCoin. I don't really know anything about.
No, I'm still learning more about that. I think it's voodoo, but that's just my opinion. I don't know enough about it
Yeah.
to really give an informed
I
comment.
mean, it's possible that they kick it off, but I feel like they talked about it such a long time ago that you'd think you'd hear more about it, especially with the rise in these electronic currencies. But I think it was more of just kind of like one of those distractions or those, kind of fake news stories. I mean, who really knows it? Anything's possible at this point in time. But as far as I know, they haven't talked about it much lately.
All right. You guys see any other questions? Somebody wants to know if Bitcoin is safe. And I mean, I feel like that's more financial advice again.
Yeah, I'd kind of refer to what I said earlier, educate yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And it's speculative like a stock. So again, if you invest in like, Chevron or Ford, they make a product. And I kind of understand how the markets work for that. I don't know what, the crypto's based on. Be prepared to take a loss. You could make out great, but you're going to gamble.
It is a gamble, I think. I mean, and I know from experience. I mean, we bought a little bit of something and we lost our butts on it. So it's not something that I would really recommend you messing around with. We only took a tiny little bit of money and played with it. And I mean, if that's something that you want to do because you think it might pay off, I would never invest a whole bunch of money into something like that. That's just me, my personal. I'm not saying that's right, wrong, or indifferent, but that's just my view and my experience.
No, I'd
I
agree.
see any other questions on here?
I can. The chat zipped by on me, and now I'm confused as to where I was.
I know, right? I did the same thing. I'm like, what am I looking at now?
I see Baba Yaga put a little sheep there. I lost my glasses, so I can't read what's going with the sheep. Okay, unfortunately, most people are sheeple. Okay.
Yeah, Rapture Ready says if you can't hold it, it ain't real, and I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, exactly.
And
That's a
keep
good
in
point.
mind, there's some companies out there that have been around since, before the Great Depression. So if they're still here and they made it through the Great Depression, 2 world wars, and all that other stuff,
I love that. Yeah.
you could probably say, all right, well, they did something right. But
They're a
again,
little more intelligent.
my understanding of economics is I provide a service or a product and I get currency and then I share it with my shareholders. But I have magic money from somewhere and it just I can't. I'm not sure what to make of it, but I myself am not touching it.
Hi, Vancity. I see you popped in there. Thank you for joining us. I think we're about ready to wrap this up, though. I don't see any other questions. I know we are way past that hour marker. So did you guys want to add anything else? I have just one last thing that I want to close with just because it's something that I do at the end of these streams. So I wanted to go ahead and close with a couple verses that I found that I thought were good verses that we could share. Did you guys have anything else you wanted to add?
No.
No?
This was great. This was a great panel.
It was a really great conversation. I thank you both for joining me. And if you guys are not subscribed to their channels, please go over and subscribe. So the verses that I have Romans 12:2. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. And then I had this other one that I wanted to share with you. And this one is in Philippians 4, verses 6-7. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything, by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ. And in Christ Jesus. Yeah, sorry, I can't see the whole thing. But I just wanted to close with that because I think that it's very important that we keep our minds and our hearts on God and what His Word says. And it's very it's easy to get overwhelmed with everything that's going on. And so it's always good to go back to the Word of God and know what it says about not being anxious, not being fearful, and staying in faith. And keeping our minds on that rather than everything that's so negative. It's a good idea to go ahead and to think on the good and lovely things, right?
Definitely. Count your blessings, guys, and take care of yourselves. That's your most important prep. If you're sick or you're hurt, you can't help the people you love.
Exactly. All right, guys, I thank you so much for coming on here, for joining me tonight. I will definitely have you gentlemen back on at some other point because I really enjoyed this conversation.
This was great. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone who joined us in chat. I greatly appreciate each and every one of you. If you were not here, we would not have an audience at all. We'd be talking to ourselves. So you guys help make this community strong, and we all greatly appreciate your support. So with that, I hope you guys all have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you guys back here next Friday. Bye.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Have a good one.